I want to thank you all for listening today. My name is Shanti Harkness, and I'm the Media Manager for On Technology Partners, a woman-owned company addressing cybersecurity and risk. As a woman-owned business for 30 years, we wanted to share the stories of women and the struggles, triumphs, and reflections they face. This is why we started Women STaRs. Join us as we share the reflections of women just like you that have survived struggles and embraced triumphs in their lives. Today, we'll be talking with Kelly Kidd. I've known Kelly for, is it about 8 years now, I believe?
At least.
Yeah. She has been a wonderful mentor, colleague, and friend. So Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me and for thinking of me for this segment. It's exciting.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. So before we begin, we'll have a little icebreaker question. So tell us something that others may not know about you or something funny or exciting about yourself.
Well, exciting is right now, actually, with the pandemic and a lot of time that we have in the house, and I am focusing on actually building the creative aspects of my craft business. So that's been really exciting. I have the time to do that I wouldn't otherwise have. And something funny is I do not like my bare feet touching the grass. So I need to have shoes when I walk in the grass at all times. Bare feet anywhere else is fair game. So
that's interesting. Very funny indeed, but exciting news about being able to work on your craft business. I know
it really is exciting.
Some really amazing different crafts, so that's exciting. You get to work on that more.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into this interview. So if you could just tell us a little bit about what you do, your background, different positions that you've held, your education, how long you've been in your field, things like that.
Sure. In general, my positions have all been related to public health. And I've been, working in public health for a little over 20 years now, I would say. And I have a education-wise bachelor's degree in health science with a focus on community health and health education, which basically is pre-med with social sciences included is kind of how the degree is focused. And I have a master's in public health with a focus on community health. And I have not finished, but I've completed 84 credits of a doctorate degree in education, so an EDD as opposed to a PhD. And the focus is adult learning and higher education. I personally like the adult learning part. And I've completed my research. I just haven't written up everything and, defended it and all of that stuff. And I've worked in profit, nonprofit, home infusion, health departments, national nonprofit organizations, health systems, retail pharmacy. I'm sure I'm missing a couple of things. And I've done anything from actually marketing and media for a health system and health educator, health education supervisor, community impact director, patient education, and patient experience coach. That was actually one of my most interesting jobs. And I think I'm forgetting the rest of the question, but hopefully I've touched on everything.
Very, very well-rounded in the different I can't think of what the right word is, the different areas or organizations related to public health and education and wellness and things like that. The different industries, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate, and it hasn't been, as an aside, it hasn't really been until the past few years that I've really realized that when it comes to public health, I've been lucky enough to have experiences that a lot of individuals in public health haven't had the opportunity to have, just by nature of kind of following what I'm interested in and following my passion and being able to see the continuum of care when it comes from health, from the patient perspective to the provider perspective to the administrative perspective, public, private, and it's been an interesting ride. Yeah.
So that actually leads me into my next question is, how did you decide what you wanted to do with your life? How did you decide on your career choice?
Well, I'd have to take that back, 92, 93, so a while ago. And I started out in 90 in school for physical therapy. Wanted to be a physical therapist. At that time, now it's industry standard to go to when you're a PT, you have your DPT, so your doctorate of physical therapy. And then it was not. So I found a program where you didn't have to reapply as long as you kept your grades up. You went 5 years, you had your DPT, and it was fabulous because it was very focused. And unfortunately, after my first year, I was a 10th of a grade point away from keeping my full scholarship to stay. So I needed to take a year off school. During that year, I volunteered athletic training, physical therapy clinic, and the like. And I decided that what I liked about it, or what I thought I liked about it, was a very small part of what the discipline is. So when I went to Slippery Rock, transferred schools, I started out with athletic training as my major because you had to pick something. My advisor suggested that I take an intro to community health class. So I took an intro to community health class with Mr. Bish. And Mr. Bish, if you're out there listening to this, thank you, because I truly owe my life's passion to your class. And I was hooked. Not even 2 months in, I went to my advisor, changed my major, and said, this is what I'm doing. This is my purpose in life. I feel it in my bones. I know this is what I want to do. I'm doing it. And I've never looked back. It's pretty cool.
It is. That's great that you had, one particular teacher that you can trace that back to.
Yes.
I know that teachers and professors can have a huge impact on a person's trajectory as far as their career and life choices that they make. So that's wonderful that you had that experience. So before we get into talking about struggles, let's take a moment and focus on some of your biggest triumphs. Can you share what happened and why it was such a great triumph for you?
For me, I'm very focused on, and the core of my being is really centered on patient personal choice, right? Health equity are terms we hear today, and social justice is a term that we hear today. And really, I think that I truly believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all living things. And trust is a big foundation of that. And I would say one of my, and I might tear as I share this story, one of my biggest triumphs is one day an individual walked into where I was working, and I worked at a federally qualified health center at the time. And he said, you told me that you would always be there for me. And I had just done some basic outreach education. That's how I came to know this person. And I said, yes. And he said, well, I'm thinking of killing myself. And the only thing that I could think of was that you're a person in my life who said you'd always be there for me. And so I came to see you. Yeah, sorry, I'm tearing a little.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I think that is when you have that kind of trust and you can be there for someone in their moment of need, that's a triumph.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't expect that.
No, it's okay. You're actually making me cry. Because I can relate to that person. I've struggled with depression almost my entire life. But I didn't have anybody that I could reach out to when I was at that point. So for that man to be able to trust you and to be able to reach out to you in such a time of need, just speaks volumes. And that you were able to be there for him. That's definitely a triumph.
It's an honor. And I would say, also shines light on, for all intents and purposes, I'm an acquaintance for him, right? I had met him once. And so it also makes me think, well, I'm deeply honored that I could be the person that he chose to trust and reach out to in what has to be one of the most vulnerable moments in a person's life. That I also think about, what is his circumstance, that, as you mentioned, having that kind of support and having a support system that, for all intents and purposes, he needed to reach out to someone who he had just met once. And that, I think, is also part of what drives me, is that what else is there, and what is that environment, and how can we really make sure that those support systems are there and that environment exists for everyone, that they can feel that they can not only be vulnerable but share that, because it is, that topic specifically is very delicate and uncomfortable for a lot of people too. But anyway, so I would say trust. That's one of many stories, but I would say that my triumphs are trust. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we know that triumphs don't come without their share of struggles, right?
Absolutely.
So what have been some of your biggest struggles? This can be professionally, this can be personally. If you could share how you got through it, how it affected you, what kind of impact it had on your life or your career, and what really made it so challenging.
Sure. Gosh, I would say one of the biggest and probably obvious ones, just by looking at me, is the fact that I am a woman. And being a woman even in an industry that typically is saturated with women, right? Public health, and typically does have a very female-heavy environment. And even so, I think being a woman, and being a woman who, I wasn't always this way, who is more assertive, and who will speak for those who often don't have a voice, and will cause that friction and push, professionally, of course, but push those lines that people often will consider taboo, but they need to be discussed. Because they are a foundation of the environment, whatever environment that is. I would say that's been one of the biggest struggles that I have, not having a clinical degree. I do not have a clinical degree, and working in environments where it is clinician heavy and public health, not having a clinical degree but still knowing what I know, has also been a challenge with credibility and influence. It is very easy, and I'm sure so many people can relate to this. It's very common to dismiss a female with thoughts and ideas, especially when she is a little more assertive. And it is even more common, unfortunately so, to struggle and resist embracing an individual in a clinical environment that does not have a clinical degree. And I think professionally, those have been the two biggest struggles, especially when interacting with C-suite individuals, so organizational leaders and decision makers who in certain systems may be clinicians themselves, and who really are, it's just a lack of exposure. I'd like to say that it's ego, and in some cases it is. I'd like to say, and it's very easy to say, that it would be because of males in authority. That's not always the case either. I really think it's the division and the separation of, in my field at least, the clinical and the non-clinical. And really that integration, we hear that a lot in public health too, right? Integrative health. And we're looking at mental health, we're looking at behavioral health and that integration. We're looking at substance use and abuse. We're looking at patient-centered medical home, right? And how do we have this home base for individuals to receive the care that they need, and recognizing that different disciplines have their strengths and have their limitations. And so how can we really have this collective effort of individuals caring, or teams caring for individuals and communities and themselves? And so I find that, as a woman, I've struggled. As a non-clinician, I've struggled. And it really comes down to just how traditions have been kind of established over time, and that separation that we have seen in the public health profession of this is my job, and this hierarchy of beliefs of how useful these aspects are. But now we're seeing, especially in the pandemic, that the non-clinical aspects of life are very, very important to the health and well-being of an individual. And how can we address that? And I feel like I've been talking too much about that, because I really could go on and on with that conversation forever. And so I'll put a pause on that. And personally, I would say the struggle has been, I have complex PTSD. And so with that does come, its own set of challenges with panic and with anxiety, with aspects of depression. And I think the filter that you see the world with, right? And especially when one of the challenges is, am I safe? And that's one of the things that I have a challenge with in panic with my PTSD, that has been something that I've had to take a step back and reframe how I see conversations, how I look at the whole picture, not only what's being said, but body language and what is the intent behind this. And that has, while unfortunate because that is something that I struggle with, it also has helped me in my career to see, what does this person mean when someone is frustrated, when they're yelling, if they're swearing, for example, in a lot of the environments that I've been in. What does that really mean? What does that person struggle? What is going on? And it has made me, I think, more in tune to that and more empathic as a result. But I do struggle, especially in the arena of confidence, right? And that am I allowed to say a swear word?
Let's keep it G.
Okay, that I am a bad, and I can do it, that I am empowered, and that it's okay if I do these things. So I think that's the personal struggle. And then having those professional layers of just being a female in society, I think plays on that as well. So yeah, you just find a balance, and it's always a work in progress.
Absolutely. So to kind of go along with all of that you shared, do you have like any kinds of tips or tricks that you use to help you get through those challenging times, or to help you get through those struggles?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I meditate a lot.
My favorite.
And actually that's just something that I've come to do in the past year. And it has been really helpful to just take that pause. And I think just taking that pause, acknowledging what it is that you're feeling, and kind of moving through that, it's the best 3 to 5 minutes, and sometimes 20, sometimes once a day, sometimes, 8 or 9 times a day, depending on what's happening. But I think just taking that pause, and I would say also self-care has been very important to me. I know that I need breakfast. I know that I need water, and really just listening to my body and what it needs. And instead of fighting that, kind of leaning into it and being kind to myself. And I'm a perfectionist, and that comes, part of that is born from PTSD and past experiences, and part of that I think I come by it honestly, and being born that way. And so being kind to yourself and having self-compassion is really helpful as well. And then the other aspect is just creating. Having that artistic part of myself has been really helpful in channeling joy and sharing that, and in channeling, frustration. And when I create, then it brings out that part of me that really is centering as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I know for myself as well, meditation has been monumental in helping to allow me to experience inner peace and calm, even in the midst of chaos and everything falling apart in my life. Meditation has really helped to ground me and center me and to allow me to experience that peace in the midst of storms. And I've also found that with meditation and self-care, like you mentioned, all leads to more creativity and inspiration.
It does.
Before I started really taking care of myself and meditating and quieting my mind, I have an entire art room, but I never went in there. Like, I never touched anything because I had no creative drive whatsoever. Like, everything was just in chaos. And so when I took that time to really step back, meditate, take care of myself, it's just like, ooh, inspiration and creativity and, wanting to do all of these different little things that just really make you feel so much better. Like,
it does.
And I know you can relate with the creative work that you do. Like, you feel so good when you're done. So good. And it's just like this wonderful perpetual cycle that the more you take care of yourself, the easier it becomes, the greater the feeling that you have as a result. So it's a wonderful reminder to our viewers and our readers to, take the time to take care of yourself, and good things will follow with that.
It counts for a lot, and we have to take the time, whether it's a chunk of time or 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. There's always a part of the day that you can take to have some kind of self-care. And it may be sitting on the porch for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be the exercise, X amount of times a day and 10,000 steps. And they're all great guidelines for health. Sometimes we need to look at the realistic aspects of our life and what's the next best thing that I can do for myself.
Baby step. I might not be able to do all of it all of the time perfectly, right, but every little step that we can take is going to have a benefit, short term and long term.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So this kind of goes into my next question. Women in this modern age, we balance so many different things in our life. So how do you make sure that you're maintaining a work-life balance? I know it's a little different now that with the pandemic, you don't have a job and are searching, but just like in general, how do you make sure that you're keeping that work-life balance?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I would say even being unemployed, there still is this work-life balance, right? Because searching for a job that's a lot of work.
A lot of work. You're right.
It's a job in and of itself. Different circumstances, of course. But yeah, I think for me, it really is that creative aspect. It is actually, even whether I'm creating something or I'm reading a book, I'm meditating, I'm watching my favorite funny movie and having a laugh, I'm talking with a friend. It is just making sure that I take time for something that is for me. Even when we are balancing family, right? Significant others in the home, children, if we're caring for parents or someone else, we have so many different roles and hats that it can be, and we tend to care for ourselves last, right? We hear it, everything we hear, it's all around us. We tend to care for ourselves last, and it's cliche, and yet it's true. Who cares for the caregiver? We do. And I think giving yourself permission to be able to do that is is essential. I used to be the person who carried the BlackBerry and answered, worked 80 hours a week and answered phone calls and emails at 11 o'clock at night. And I quickly learned that continues to happen when you set the stage for that to be able to happen. And for me, I think what changed that to have a balance was I was a manager of a program. I had the flu. I was home with the flu and received a call from my supervisor to say that the state needed a report. And I have 103 fever. There's no way that I'm going to be able to function to get these things done. And my response was, the information that they need is in different reports. I think my team can pull it together. And it'll be okay. I really don't. I pushed back and said, I have the flu. I cannot come in and do this. I just can't. And I think that conversation really helped me to frame that. Oh my gosh, I'm lacking that balance. Oh my gosh, how did I get here? How did it happen that I'm getting a phone call when I have 103 fever demanding a report that didn't need to be done that day? And truly. And so, all of it worked out. And, my supervisor called the state, explained that I was home with the flu, and they were fine with it. And that's when I really realized that you need to have that balance and be able to set those boundaries for yourself. Yeah. And I think juggling is just really what are the most important things that you need to do for the day, or for the moment, or for the minute, and make sure that includes time for you.
Very important reminders. I wanted to mention this earlier when you were talking about assertiveness and speaking up. And it's so important because I feel many women are afraid to do that. And I include myself in that. And I can thank you and your example of your assertiveness and your commitment to speaking up, especially for people that don't have a voice or that are afraid to speak up for themselves, that you provided a great example and showed me that, no, if you see an injustice or if you see something that's not right, speak up, because, nobody else is. And, if it's right and it, you have to speak up. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for that. You've been like I mentioned, a wonderful mentor and role model. And I have you to thank for a lot of that. So I think it's just a nice reminder for all of our viewers as well to not be afraid. This is your health. This is your life. This is your career. If you need something or see something that isn't right, you need to speak up and be concerned about, what any potential consequences might be, that you have to stand up for the truth and for what you need and for what's right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for making my day with that compliment.
Absolutely. So, because we juggle so many different responsibilities and caregiving and illnesses and things of that nature, what do you think are some of the things that employers could do to help women to be able to have that work-life balance and to be able to juggle all of these things that we do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that experiencing the pandemic, we are seeing the struggles of that balance more, right? Even though, and I know that we're not excluding males and their role in helping in the household, but truly women are traditionally and continue to traditionally be seen as the main caregivers, those who carry the mental load for the home, those who organize things and really overall provide that care even after work. And now we're looking at during work, there's this balance and this added challenge because individuals are working from home. And I think employers, flexible hours when it's appropriate and when there's an environment to be able to do so would be very helpful. My most recent employer was fabulous. Now for myself, I do not have little ones at home that I need to fit into that schedule. But so many of my colleagues and even my boss and vice presidents would, I get my kids on the bus. And so I start my day here, then I take this break, and then, I pick up my kids from school. And having that flexibility and that is so helpful from a family standpoint, from a task standpoint. But I really think the culture of care is what makes the biggest difference. When you have an organization that, no matter how big or small, and my most previous employer is a national organization. And so when you have that culture of caring and that culture of health and that culture of family, then it's very easy to be flexible with things and be adaptive in an environment. As an example, I have fragrance sensitivities, terrible ones that can, certain types of fragrances and smells can actually send me to the emergency room and my throat closes. And I've worked in various environments where even something like that is either embraced or, oh, you're a woman who just, has a hard time with stress and things. And so, just go take care of that. And it's more dismissed as opposed to a male colleague. And so I think just looking at that culture of, we have individuals, what does it take within the boundaries of the business, right? Because there still is work to be done and there still are deadlines that need to be accomplished. And how can we foster pay, right? That balance is helpful when women are paid, when there's equity of pay. When we look at educational opportunities that are often not afforded to women that are for men, I would say opportunities for females to lead, whether it's in title or in a project or a team or a task, and just provide those opportunities for exposure for that professional growth. And then, as I said, personally, having that flexibility of hours, of all kinds of things from daycare on site to laundry on site to, some of those things that just make it easier to accomplish tasks and be able to be focused on work as a start. Because again, that's a whole other, day-long conversation, but yeah.
Yeah. I think all of your suggestions are spot on. I know the flexibility of schedules in a job is massive. And I know I've had a few jobs that have had that flexibility, and it's been great, being able to change my start time or my end time, or to be able to go to a doctor's appointment or a meeting that I can work with my work schedule to be able to accommodate those. And it's so much easier and less stressful of a work option. And I'm so thankful for those jobs and those positions that afforded that to me. So that definitely, I think, goes a long way towards that balance. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. When women are seen as an asset as opposed to a potential liability, it really changes the game.
Absolutely. So speaking of women as assets, do you think that a person has to overcome setbacks or challenges in order to truly be successful?
I don't know that I can answer that question well, only because life is not without setbacks and challenges. So I would say that there are very few people who could sit in front of you or anyone and say, never had a setback and I've never had a challenge. So I don't know that can be taken out of the equation. I think that some people definitely have more setbacks and challenges than others. And depending on what it is, it can really shape and change a person and who they are and influence. I lost my shoes is very different than, my house burned down, for example. And so, but yet you never know if those lost shoes had an impact on someone so significantly. So I would say yes, only by nature of, because it's life for everyone. how we measure success can be very different as well. And so I would say it depends on your definition of success. I really don't mean to sound so elusive on answering the question. To me, it's not necessarily a yes or a no answer. I think it's more how do you handle what life brings, and how do you find ways to be resilient, and how are you focusing on what matters most as opposed to societal standard of success, which I'm not saying you're implying, and did I have a setback or not, but how is that used to propel you forward, or something else.
Thank you for your explanation. That'll actually lead me right into my next question. So how do you define success, and do you feel that you yourself are successful?
Most days, yes, I'm successful. I would say when I go to bed at night and I feel good about myself and about the work that I've done, regardless of what that is. Right now being an employee is not actually work, and that the proverbial saying, I've done no harm, then it's a good day, and it's a successful day. Again, just depends on how do you measure success. But yeah, I think most days I am successful. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question? I've already forgotten.
How you defined success?
Yeah, for me, it is those things. I live in an apartment. I don't have a house. I still feel successful. I think it's your personal passion and living your purpose. And if I've been able to do that, and if I've been able to help someone along the way, then to me, that is success. So
thank you. Do you have any habits or anything that you do that helps you to feel successful?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I'm working on getting back to those habits now. Learning. For me professionally, I really like to see who's hiring, who's not, what kinds of positions, what kinds of jobs. It gives me a pulse on the ebbs and flows of the industry. And reading articles, being very active on blogs and different discussion lists. That for me helps I like to learn, so that for me helps me to have that learning. I belong to a health literacy discussion list, and that's one of the habits I'm trying to get back into, is being more active in that, so that I can learn from others and what they are doing and have those different perspectives, so that I can just kind of understand more about the world. And yeah.
Never stop learning. That's
never stop learning.
Very good advice.
Never. Never. And yeah, and just surround yourself with good people, because I learn more that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So what is the best advice that you've ever received?
Wow. Be the sandpaper. When I moved to Harrisburg, my first job here, my boss at the time said, be the sandpaper, because change only comes from friction.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I haven't received, great advice all the other times in my life. So it's not that I've been absent of good advice for 40 some years, but just the way that she put it really put a lot of things into perspective. And my role at the time, as patient engagement coach, I think I said experience before, was to really change culture. My job was culture change. A lot of resistance to that. And of course, because it's it's a process. And when the only thing that comes that fosters change is a little bit of friction, and it can be good. Challenges can be good. Conflict can be healthy, and I would say that kind of intertwines into the second best piece of advice that I've ever received was it's very good to be disliked by the right people.
I love both of them.
Yeah.
I really like the sandpaper. I wasn't quite sure where that was going to go when you first said that. But it reminded me of another quote that I had heard many, many years ago about life being a grinding stone. Whether it grinds you down or polishes you up depends on what you're made of. And that kind of always stuck with me. But it kind of reminded me of your sandpaper. But yeah, that's a great quote.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And actually, your mention of the grinding stone reminds me of the "Are you the carrot, the egg, or the coffee" parable. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I believe I have, yes. But if you wouldn't mind sharing that for our viewers.
Well, yeah. So the essence of the story is when a life, and it's a great story to read. So I encourage everyone to search for the carrot, the egg, and a coffee story. And in essence is when challenges in life arise, are you the carrot that goes in hard and comes out, very soft, and the boiling water kind of damages you, right? So you're in hot water, things are boiling around you. Are you like the egg that goes in soft and comes out very hardened, jaded, cynical? Or are you the coffee that just really embraces the water, allows the water to create something, like coffee, that it blends and it leans into it, and it just uses that to its advantage to create the best situation possible. So it's a really interesting, a really good story to read.
It is. Thank you for sharing that. So another fun little question. Do you have any naughty little habits or indulgences that you shouldn't do, but that you do anyways?
Oh, Netflix binge. Netflix binge and a bag of potato chips, actually. I really want to be transparent. Yes. Yeah.
I think a lot of us can relate to that one, especially in the current climate.
Yes. That's one of my I say that's self-care. And if I do it too often, then it's just a lot of self-care.
There you go.
But yeah, I would say binging Netflix. Yeah.
Okay. So before we close our interview, if you want to just take a moment and reflect on something that you may have wished you known sooner in life, and then share that with us.
Trust your gut. It never steers you wrong. Never. And I would say trust your gut, because I think I don't really have a lot of regrets in life at all. I do have a few things that I wish I would have made a different choice at the time. I did the best that I could with what I had. And in each of those situations, my gut was telling me to do something else, and I didn't. And I wish I had listened to my gut. One was going to grad school, and I put that off. I was married at the time, and I put that off because my then husband was he didn't want to move, even though, we had discussed that. And the second was, before I moved, I was offered a job and I didn't take it. And I wish that, not before I moved here to Harrisburg, but younger in life, I was offered a job, and I chose to move with my then boyfriend so that he could go to school, because I didn't want to do distance relationship, even though we would only be 2 hours away. And again, not a regret, did what I thought was right at the time. Looking back, my gut was so strong in both of those. It'd have been good to listen So yeah, I would say trust, just whatever the situation, trust your gut.
Very good
Yeah.
pointers. Thank you. So last question. What advice would you give to a young woman beginning her career?
Go for it. Just follow your passion. It will never steer you wrong. Learn all you can. Find those who you admire. Ask them how they got there, what they learned. Just like this interview, what have you learned along the way? What advice would you have for someone like me who's just starting out? Look at jobs. You don't have to be job seeking to know what's out there. Because when you find, actually, this is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever had too. When you see jobs that excite you, look at the qualifications. And after a while, you're going to start to find a theme of what you're interested in, and go get that skill. Go learn that. Be part of a team or a project, whether it's personally or professionally. Chase it. Do it. Do not hold back. That's the advice I would give.
Excellent. Excellent advice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kelly, it has been an absolute privilege speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So that's all for this episode of Women STaRs. If you'd like to nominate a businesswoman to be interviewed for Women STaRs, please email their contact information and your reason for nominating them to stars@ontechpartners.com. My name is Shanti Harkness. Until next time, have a great day.